On today's episode of Living Your Best Life, I have my good friend Jim West. He's the president of Total Life Counseling, and he's going to be speaking about some major issues that are affecting many of us. Vaping and screen time. You don't want to miss this. I want to introduce you to some of my friends who are going to share some relevant issues that we all go through. See, when you hold it inside, it's like a volcano, and sooner or later it erupts. I want you to know that there is hope, and if you're going through a hard time, you're not alone. The more you see your dreams and goals, the more likely you are to take action towards them and be accountable. I am excited about this event today with my good friend. This is Jim West, and Jim, I got to tell you, thanks for coming out here today, man.
Thanks for having me.
This has been on my heart because we get so many letters from parents, with high school, middle school students, and the primary letters we've been getting are on vaping.
Okay.
And Jim, on screen time.
Yeah, I'm seeing it a lot.
The addiction. And I know you have this program, I believe it's called Addictions, the New Millennium.
Right,
and
yeah.
I want to hear about this because I know parents out there, you're going to want to hear this. Sit down and listen to this conversation because it could be life-changing.
Well, addictions in the new millennium is basically there's new addictions that we just didn't have before. Right? I mean, the electronic addiction, there's the vaping, there's the THC, which used to be 0.74% THC, not even 1% THC. And now it's 30% if you're smoking actual pot, or just actual weed, like so the actual plant. But then you get into these dab pens, and they have up to 90% THC, and the cartridges have around 75 to 90% THC. Wow. So it's like 100 times more powerful. And so, of course,
and we're calling this safe, though, right? I mean,
sure.
This is what they call safe.
Well, yeah, because they're saying that weed doesn't kill anybody, and it doesn't, and it's not addictive. And of course, back in the 60s and 70s, when it was this much THC and this much CBD, it wasn't addictive. And CBD does help, like anxiety and depression. It doesn't really help ADHD. But it does help like seizure disorder, and people that are on chemotherapy drugs, it really helps them too when it's that much CBD. But when it's this much THC and this much CBD, it's not as helpful. People are getting, because THC causes all the things that CBD helps. So it's really crazy.
So when a parent comes to you and says, how can I get my child off vaping? I mean, because we're seeing it at schools. I mean, the kids are bringing it to schools, and they're getting stricter and stricter about it. But many of these parents are beside themselves. And how do we get our kids off vaping?
Wow. Well, the vaping devices, the nicotine device, they thought that was safe because they're not going to be getting tar, and they're not going to from the tobacco, right? Right. So they thought, right. But then there was an NYU study that just came out last year in 2019 that said that e-cigarette nicotine causes cancer in 25% of rats in 1 year. Wow. Okay? Now that was not with any flavors, no vitamin E acetate, no, there's some, that's that popcorn lung, what is it, the popcorn lung drug, I can't remember what it's called, but they don't have any of that stuff in there, just the e-nicotine, just the e-cigarette, okay? That was causing bladder tumors in more than half of those rats, okay, in 1 year. So I can't imagine where I'm hearing kids have vaping lung, which is basically getting pneumonia, and one of my clients, his lungs were 75% full of fluid, and he almost suffocated to death from vaping.
And we're seeing this more and more. I mean, when it first started, the vaping first came out, it was so promoted. I mean, these advertisements were all over the place, and everybody's thought, oh, this is safe, it's approved, it's this and that. But now we're seeing, I mean, kids are dying now. I mean, we're seeing, you talk about the lung problems that we're seeing in kids that are just horrendous.
These U.S. Attorney Surgeon General gave the FDA an F grade on how badly they've handled this situation because they saw a 78% increase in vaping in just 2018. I mean, he called it an epidemic. And so that's why they raised the age now for this in 2020. They raised the age to 21, and it's made it more challenging for kids to get it. But they go to places that don't check their ID. Yeah. They're not policing it very well. And nicotine is one of the most addictive drugs out there. It's highly addictive.
Jim, tell us what would you suggest to parents? How do you get your kid off it? What are some steps that they can take, or what can they do? I know you have a great video at your. We're going to promote that at the end, or show the link to it.
Sure.
On addiction, but just from talk to the parents and explain to them how they can get their kid off these vaping.
Sure. Well, it's really important to educate the kids on this, and that's why I made this video. Because parents, I did the research, and they can educate their kids on how this isn't safer. I mean, they were thinking that the tobacco itself was causing the addiction, and it was also causing the cancer. But it causes COPD, but cardiopulmonary disease. But the thing is that it's the nicotine that causes all of those things. So they thought they were getting away from it. So we really need to be educating our kids, on that first. And then of course, you're going to have to drug test them. Hopefully you're going to have to be your own drug program. So we do like a 30, 60, 90-day contract that we recommend. Hey, if you're clean for 30 days, maybe you can get your keys back to the car. If you're clean, maybe just to school and back or to work and back. And then if you're clean for 60 days, we'll say, okay, you can take your car out with an approved friend, but we're going to keep drug testing you. If you pissed negative or positive, then you're going to go back to the first 30 days. And if you do it 2 or 3 times, then maybe you need to go into a partial program or an addictions program to get off of it.
Because it is so addicting.
It's highly addictive. The nicotine is highly addictive. And they're doing this while they're kids, while their brain is developing. So when you get addicted as a child, while your neurochemistry is happening and developing, it's going to make it, you're going to struggle with that more the rest of your life than if you were to have a cigar when you're 25 or 30 years old.
Well,
it won't grab you as much.
The saddest part is because schools say to me, they go, Mark, can you talk about vaping? And I go to you because it's like, this is something that's so unfamiliar in my life.
Right.
That going to an expert about this, and that's why I tell parents, man, they should come. First of all, watch your video.
Sure.
Watch the video, and get an appointment. Have your kids get an appointment with you.
Sure.
You're doing Skype. You're doing all kinds of
video conferencing. We're doing telehealth, and so we're trying to coach parents and try to help them get off these, addictive drugs. I mean, it's affecting lung development. It's causing lung disease. It causes lung infections. It causes pneumonia. I had a client, it collapses their lungs. The JUUL, I have a client who was supposed to be touring on, he had a big record contract, was supposed to be touring, and he couldn't tour for the first time. The whole summer he could not tour. He missed out on that opportunity because his lung collapsed. Instead of touring, he was getting physical therapy to help bring back that lung. He almost died and suffocated to death from his lung collapsing, sucking on a JUUL. That JUUL takes so much negative pressure, it collapses the lung.
Gosh, and we're seeing more and more in this. And Jim, I can't thank you enough for what you're doing and the difference you're making.
Sure.
Because I think you were telling me a story earlier about how when you become friends with these families and they tell you about the success stories of their kids.
Oh, it's awesome.
It's the best feeling in the world, knowing that you actually you're saving lives out there.
Yeah, it's a great feeling. It never gets old, right?
Amen,
and it's the same thing with you, with what you do. You're seeing lives are changed, and you're seeing kids that maybe were wanting to take their life. You're helping them to be more positive and see there's, it gets better. There's a way out, right?
Amen.
And to reach out for help. There's
awesome. No greater joy than helping another person.
No, it's awesome.
Jim, thank you for sharing that with me and the parents out there listening.
Sure.
And
My
I'll
pleasure.
talk to you soon.
Okay, great, Mark.